They thought she was just another passenger. She was their biggest client and their final warning. You'd think someone like Monica Ellison would be hard to miss. Black woman, 46, braids swept into a neat bun, cream-colored pantsuit that looked like it had been sewn directly onto her body, sharp, tailored, clean. She moved with the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't beg for attention, but never fails to earn it. She wasn't flashy, no entourage, no designer handbag swinging like a trophy, just a leather tote, a phone she barely looked at, and a presence you couldn't ignore even if you tried. But in certain places, certain rooms, certain flights, it wasn't about how powerful you were. It was about whether they believed you belonged. That Thursday afternoon, Monica stood at gate C-18 in Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. Not LAX, not JFK, just MSP. She liked flying out of here when she could. Less noise, fewer people pretending to know who she was. The gate agent called first-class passengers, and Monica walked forward without hesitation. No rush, no eye contact, just a slight nod when her boarding pass scanned green. A young man, barely 25, gave her a quick glance before forcing a plastic smile. "Enjoy your flight, miss." He paused, looking down. "Ellison." She didn't correct him. She didn't say, "It's Dr. Ellison or CEO, actually," or "I own the tech behind the system you're scanning my name on." That wasn't her style. Monica had learned a long time ago, silence carries more weight than pride when you already know your worth. Seat 1, a window. She always picked the window, not for the view, for the space it gave her to think. The flight to Zurich would be long, but Monica had done worse. She'd flown to Dubai with 2 hours' notice to negotiate an 8-figure licensing deal on no sleep. Zurich was nothing. She settled in, crossed her legs, pulled out a folder from her tote. Inside her keynote speech for the International Fin to Tech Innovation Summit, 35 minutes on equity in tech infrastructure. She'd written every word herself. Across the aisle, a man in a Patagonia jacket struggled to fit his overhead bag into the bin. He glanced at her like he expected help. Monica blinked once, then turned back to her notes. She didn't make small talk with strangers on planes. Not anymore. A few minutes later, the rest of first class trickled in. A blonde woman. Inexpensive yoga gear, an older man with a golf hat and sour breath, a mother with a toddler who kept kicking the seat in front of her, and then finally, the late one, a white guy in a wrinkled shirt who looked like he had never flown business in his life. He dropped into 1 degree Celsius right across the aisle from Monica, his carry-on bulging with snacks. Flight attendants began their routine, friendly voices, plastic grins. "Can I get you settled with a drink, Miss Ellison?" one asked. A woman named Kelly or maybe Carrie. It was hard to hear over the pilot's garbled announcement. Monica nodded. "Still water." "Room temp, please." The woman blinked, paused like it was a strange request, then scribbled something on her notepad and moved on. Monica didn't care. She was used to those pauses, the kind where someone pretends they didn't just judge you. She checked her email once, then powered down. There was nothing urgent, just a quiet flight and a job to do when she landed. But she had no idea that by the end of this flight, she would send a single email that would cost the airline millions, put a whole crew on administrative leave, and spark a debate across corporate America about how quiet power moves behind the scenes. But at 36,000 feet, control can slip out of reach in the smallest, pettiest ways. They took off right on time. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and the hum of the engines faded into a soft background noise, the kind that usually made Monica drowsy just enough to think clearly. She reclined slightly, adjusted her seat, and tapped her fingers against the edge of her tray table. She didn't need music or movies. Her mind was already miles ahead. The keynote, the Zurich panel, the Q&A on fintech equity, the closed-door meeting with the Swiss Development Fund. She ran through it all like clockwork. This wasn't new for her. The only new thing maybe was that odd tension in the air. Small, like a thread tugging at the edge of a shirt. You couldn't see it, but if you pulled too hard, the whole thing might unravel. Flight attendants moved through first class with practiced ease. The man across from her, the one in the wrinkled shirt, leaned into the aisle to joke with one of them. "You got anything stronger than this sparkling water?" he said, holding up his glass. The attendant, a tall man with a military haircut, laughed politely and offered him bourbon. "Just say when," he joked. The man smirked. "You'll know when." They both chuckled and Monica watched them. The familiar way they interacted, like two people who already decided who fit where. She'd seen it too many times. It wasn't about kindness. It was about comfort. And comfort, in these spaces, rarely included her. The woman from earlier, the one Monica had asked for still water, came down the aisle again with a tray. She handed drinks to a couple in row 2. She handed a Coke to the man in 1 degree Celsius. Then she walked past Monica's row without stopping. No water, no glance, nothing. Monica raised an eyebrow. She waited a beat. Maybe the woman would realize. Maybe she forgot. But the attendant didn't come back. She didn't even look her way. Across the aisle, Mr. A Wrinkled Shirt took a loud gulp of his bourbon and let out a satisfied ah. He leaned back, already loosening his tie like he was home on his couch. Monica sat upright, calm still. She pressed the call button. Ding. The tall male attendant showed up this time, still smiling. "Yes, Mrs. Ellison. I requested still water earlier. I never received it." "Oh," he said, blinking fast like he hadn't expected to be called out. "Let me check with the galley." She nodded once. He disappeared. Minutes passed. Other passengers got refills, crackers, some kind of appetizer. The woman in row 2 was halfway through her wine. Still no water. The man returned. "Apologies, Ms. Ellison. Looks like we're out of still. We got sparkling or club soda." She stared at him. "I asked for still water when I boarded. I know you carry it for first class." He hesitated. His smile slipped. "Yes." "Well, it looks like the cabin ran through our supply quicker than expected." He didn't meet her eyes. She paused, studying him. She could feel the edge of something in his tone. Like she was asking for too much. Like she was being difficult. She leaned back in her seat, slow and deliberate. "That'll be all," she said. He left. 2 rows ahead. D. The woman in yoga gear held a bottle of still water unopened. Monica watched as the attendant offered her a second. So much for running through supply. Across the aisle, Mr. Wrinkled Shirt had food now. Chicken, rice, something that smelled warm and seasoned. He hadn't pre-ordered. Monica overheard him say it during boarding. And yet, there it was, a full tray, no delay. The final nail came a moment later. The flight attendant walked past Monica again, the woman from before, and didn't even glance down. Not a word, not a check-in. Like Monica wasn't there. Monica didn't frown, didn't sigh, didn't even shift in her seat. She just reached down, pulled out her notebook, and clicked her pen. She started writing, but she wasn't taking notes for her keynote anymore. She was documenting something else. Dinner service began quietly. One by one, the flight attendants moved through first class with those silver carts. Hot trays clinketed softly. Polite whispers filled the space. "Would you like the chicken or the pasta?" The kind of gentle luxury that first class was supposed to promise. Monica didn't look up right away. She was still writing, flipping back through a few notes in the folder on her lap. She knew what she ordered, a plant-based entree, soy-free, gluten-free, not because it was trendy, but because she had allergies. The form had been submitted when she booked the flight. She always double-checked. Always. She heard the man across the aisle chuckle again. "Pasta for me unless the chicken's good." "It's great tonight," the attendant said. "We've got extra, so you're in luck." Extra. That word stuck in her head. Another passenger was offered a second roll. Someone else a fresh H drink. Meanwhile, Monica waited. The cart moved closer. She closed the folder and sat upright, ready. Then it happened. The attendant, same woman, same forced smile, stopped at Monica's row, glanced down at her, and paused. She leaned in slightly. "We're so sorry," she said in a tone that sounded like it had been rehearsed 100 times. "We seem to have run out of your selected meal." Monica blinked. "That's not possible," she said flatly. "I submitted my selection 3 days ago. It was confirmed." The woman tilted her head like she was pretending to be sympathetic. "Yes, but the catering team didn't load enough meals for special requests. We can offer you a pasta entree instead. Does it contain gluten? Yes, it does. But we can try to find you something else." Maybe a fruit plate or I'm allergic to wheat, Monica interrupted. Oh, the woman said, already backing away. Let me check with the galley. Monica didn't respond. She looked at her watch. 34 minutes into meal service. From her seat, she watched the crew move back and forth. Nobody came back to her row. She waited. Across the aisle, the man who hadn't pre-selected anything now had a full tray. Pasta, salad, bread, and a brownie. You sure you don't want this chicken? He said jokingly to the woman next to him. She laughed. No, I'm sticking with the salad tonight. He leaned back and shoved the chicken in his mouth with the kind of careless confidence you only see in people who never had to fight for space. Monica stayed still. Her stomach had already given up hope. What got to her wasn't hunger. It was the principle. She didn't want the food anymore. She wanted the truth. 15 minutes later, the attendant returned. No tray. No apology. Just a small plate with 3 slices of apple and a lemon wedge. This is all we could find, she said, placing it in front of Monica like it was a gift. Monica looked down at it. Where is your supervisor? She asked calmly. She's assisting in the main cabin. I can ask her to come by once she's free. Monica nodded once. Do that. The woman left. No supervisor came. 10 minutes, then 20. Still nothing. She looked around. Every other first-class passenger was eating or finishing. The crew was laughing near the curtain divider. Even the pilot walked by to chat with someone in 1D. Monica was invisible, or worse, deliberately ignored. She leaned forward, pulled out her phone, and opened the Notes app. She typed, Flight 622, MSP to Zurich, first class. Meal service denied. Allergy info ignored. No communication from supervisor. Second-class treatment in a first-class seat. Crew names, Carrie R. Andrew M. She paused, then added, Documentation begins now. It wasn't about being dramatic. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. She clicked off her phone, folded her arms, and leaned back. Still no apology, no water, no meal. But her mind was already in motion. Because when you've spent your whole life being underestimated, you learn how to turn disrespect into strategy. By hour 4, the cabin lights were dimmed. Most passengers in first class had reclined their seats, tucked into blankets, and slipped on headphones. Soft snoring echoed from somewhere near the back, but Monica wasn't tired, not anymore. She sat upright, legs crossed at the ankle, her tray table down, empty except for her notebook, her phone, and that untouched plate of sad apple slices. Till no one had returned. Not the supervisor, not a word of acknowledgement. It was like she didn't exist, except she did, and every second that passed was quietly building the kind of story she knew how to tell. Not to the public, not to the press, but to people who made decisions at the highest level. She glanced down at her notes again. The project integration of Novalift's predictive analytics into HorizonJet's loyalty and customer service systems. A multi-year contract, tens of millions. The airline had been courting Novalift for 6 months. Dinners, invites, panel appearances, and now this. Monica reached for her phone and scrolled through her inbox. There it was, the last email from HorizonJet's VP of Business Development. Subject line, looking forward to finalizing next week. She didn't smile. She opened her camera, angled it toward the tray table, and snapped a photo of the untouched plate. Time-stamped. Then the service call button still lit. Then the seating chart on the in-flight screen with her seat 1 clearly visible. She attached all 3 to a new draft. 2. General Counsel Novalift CC VP of Operations. Subject, Flight 622. Urgent adjustment needed. She paused over the keyboard, then typed, Need immediate hold on HorizonJet rollout. Reassessment required regarding vendor compliance with service equity clauses. Incident on current flight demonstrates clear alignment issues. She stared at the screen. Her heart wasn't racing. Her fingers didn't tremble. This wasn't the first time someone tried to make her feel small. It was just the first time the cost of that disrespect had a paper trail. She hit save. Not send. Not yet. Across the aisle, the man in his wrinkled shirt had taken off his shoes and was now loudly telling the woman beside him about his company's exit strategy. I mean, it's all about leverage, right? He said, swishing what was left of his third bourbon. You've got it or you don't. Monica raised her eyes just slightly. He had no idea how real leverage worked, that it wasn't about shouting or posturing or being served first. It was about having the authority to make decisions that changed lives, sometimes without ever raising your voice. She turned back to her screen, hit send, then leaned back, exhaled slowly, and let herself close her eyes. But she wasn't resting, she was waiting. Because some lessons are taught through press releases, and some through silence. Touchdown in Zurich was smooth. Cold morning light bled through the cabin windows as the wheels met the tarmac. Monica didn't clap, she didn't cheer. She simply opened her eyes, adjusted her blazer, and straightened her posture. She looked exactly like what she was. Someone in control, someone who knew what came next. Passengers stretched, yawned, checked their phones. The man across from her, now wearing mismatched socks, groaned about the time zone. I'm going to feel this in my back all day, he muttered. Monica ignored him. She reached for her tote, placed her folder inside, and zipped it shut with care. The crew made their final announcements. Monica waited. Still no supervisor, no explanation, no apology, nothing. She stood up as soon as the seatbelt sign blinked off, calm, composed. And when she stepped off the plane into the jet bridge, her phone vibrated. One message from VP of Operations. Subject RE Flight 622. Understood. Contract hold. Initiated. Legal is drafting a revised equity clause. Meeting with Horizon Jet reps. Move to pending. We'll let them make the next move. Monica tucked her phone away and kept walking. She moved through the airport with a quiet rhythm, past the glass walls and glowing ads and hurried travelers. When she reached the car service pickup zone, her driver was already there, holding a small sign with her name. He took her bag without question. On the ride to the hotel, she finally allowed herself a moment to decompress. She looked out the window at the streets of Zurich, wet with morning rain. She thought about how many times she'd been overlooked, pushed aside, erased in rooms where she was the most qualified person sitting at the table. But this wasn't about ego. It was about patterns and whether people in power would keep pretending those patterns didn't exist until someone with leverage forced them to pay attention. By the time she arrived at the hotel, the dominoes had already started to fall. She got a call that afternoon, unknown number. She answered without speaking, a man's voice. Miss Ellison, this is Kenneth Ward. I'm head of corporate partnerships at Horizon Jet. I wanted to apologize personally for the experience you had on Flight 622. I just heard about it. It's unacceptable. Monica, let the silence stretch. Then finally, you're not calling to apologize. You're calling to stop the contract from slipping through your fingers. Ma'am, please believe me when I say this doesn't reflect our... I don't care what it reflects, she interrupted. I care about what it proves. He hesitated. I understand you've already pulled the partnership. No, she replied. We're pausing. Whether we pull depends on how seriously you take the problem. I can personally assure, don't assure me, Kenneth. Show me. Her voice was low even. Show me who gets held accountable. Show me who's removed. Show me who gets retrained. Then maybe I'll take another meeting. Until then, you're not ready to work with us. She hung up. She didn't need a headline. She didn't need to go viral. She needed accountability. 2 days later, a memo from Horizon Jet leaked to a small industry blog. It mentioned suspension of key cabin crew pending investigation. It named Flight 622, and it referred to a breach of inclusivity expectations. Within 24 hours, LinkedIn posts were lighting up. A quiet fire had started. Not loud, not angry, just precise. Because sometimes power isn't loud. It's knowing exactly where to place pressure. Monica never made a public statement. No interviews, no op-eds, no anonymous leaks. She didn't need to. By the time her keynote took place that Friday morning at the FinTech Innovation Summit, most of the room already knew what happened. Whispers had moved faster than press releases. Half the audience had read the leaked memo. The other half had heard the story. Black woman CEO denied a meal in first class, then froze a multi-million-dollar deal. But Monica, she didn't mention it, not once. Instead, she stood on stage in a navy blue suit, slides behind her showing graphs and case studies. She spoke about digital equity, about responsible data use, about how corporations talk about inclusion until they have to act on it. The applause was long, standing, sincere, but for her, It wasn't about praise. It was about the silence in the room afterward. The kind of silence that happens when people finally get it. That weekend, the airline called back again, this time from the chief executive's office. They offered to fly her back first class, complimentary. They offered to personally ensure her experience would be different. She declined quietly. She flew home with a different airline, one that had lost the original bid months ago, but had been respectful, honest, curious about what real inclusion looked like, not just how to market it. Her return flight was smooth, on time. She was offered still water the moment she sat down. The attendant used her name correctly. Small things, not fancy, not loud, just right. Back at Novalift, the company released a short internal statement. We expect all of our partners to treat people with the dignity they deserve, not because of contracts, but because it's the standard, nothing more, no hashtags, no grandstanding. But the message spread anyway. Executives started asking deeper questions about their vendors. Board members started looking at their diversity clauses a little more seriously. Other companies took notice, not because Monica dragged anyone publicly, but because of what she didn't say. The restraint made it louder. Weeks later, Monica was invited to speak on a panel titled, When Quiet Leadership Makes the Loudest Impact. She almost said no. She didn't like buzzwords, didn't care for attention. But she went. At the end of the panel, a young black woman approached her, early 20s, nervous, voice shaking. I just wanted to say I've never seen someone like me handle something like that with so much grace. You didn't yell, you didn't post, you just moved differently and it worked. Monica smiled, warm but sharp. So, times, she said. The most powerful thing you can do is make them explain their behavior to a room they respect more than you. The young woman didn't respond. She just nodded like someone taking a note she'd keep for life. Later that night, Monica sat alone at a cafe in San Mateo, coffee in one hand, pen in the other, sketching ideas for Novel's next platform. She wasn't thinking about the flight. Not really. She was thinking about what happens when people in power stop assuming that silence equals comfort, when the things we don't say force everyone else to listen harder. Not everything needs to be loud to change something. Sometimes the softest voice in the room can flip the whole system because the lesson wasn't about the meal. It was about who gets fed and who gets ignored even when they've earned their seat at the table. If you've ever been overlooked, disrespected, or dismissed, remember this. You don't always have to react to make an impact. Sometimes moving with quiet clarity and holding people accountable behind the scenes speaks louder than any headline ever could. Use your position, use your voice, and most importantly, know your worth.